Our first speaker this morning is from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, Ms. Katie Seacrest, with the Hunter Access Program. She's going to be highlighting some of the projects they're doing this year, what they've been doing in the past, and how their program can help your organization as well. Katie?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for the invitation today. Nice to have a sunny day to come out and speak to you all. I'll wait for Caleb to pull my PowerPoint up there. There we go. I'll be talking about our Hunter Access Program today. I'm with Department of Fish and Game, Division of Wildlife Conservation, and our Access Defense Group, kind of a odd little group in Fish and Game. My PowerPoint today, there's a copy of it here on most of the tables. There's some back by the door too, if folks want to take it with you. I also have some of our brochure cards with contact info, and contact info is also listed in the PowerPoint here too. So feel free to reach out anytime if you've got questions. I was supposed to present today with my colleague Colton Percy. He came down ill this morning, so I'm going to go over the last couple of slides, which were his as well. So, all right, next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, wildlife conservation probably 5-6-ish years ago first started this idea of Hunter Access Program, which is spending additional Pittman-Robertson funds above and beyond what the division uses for our management projects, research projects on public construction projects to improve hunting, trapping, now shooting, and just wildlife-related recreation in general. And so we've got about 5-6 years of work under our belts now. We do have an application process that we do go through to consider new projects. That just wrapped up our 23 application period on March 1st. I do have our website listed here. Everything most folks would want to know about our program is posted on our website. Feel free to check it out as you have time and opportunity. Our grant application page outlines all of the materials, eligibility, everything for applying for our program, and then there is a link as well to projects that we have done. So we do maintain a description of completed projects and projects that we have going on currently on our website as well. So anything that if you want more info on that I go over in my little talk here, you can find on our website. So as I mentioned, December, we opened up our 2023 application period. We're looking to spend, we had approximately $2 million available this point in time. Now that March 1st has come and gone, we're starting to go through the projects that came into us, look at those, evaluate them, confirm match availability from applicants, and then we'll be going through this summer doing public notice and public comment period, and folks are welcome to comment on that. We do have a link on our page to subscribe to program updates. If anybody is interested in getting on our email list of when application periods open or when our public comment periods open, you're welcome to subscribe. If we go to the next slide, please. This is just a screenshot of our website. I just wanted to point it out to folks. The bottom of the end of the second paragraph there is our subscribe link. So at any time you can go to our page, click subscribe. You can always unsubscribe as well. And when our application period is open, application materials will be posted on our website. And I just wanted to point out for folks down at the bottom, the tabs listed there also have all of our information. It's where the bulk of our information is. So eligibility, there's a flow chart, does my project qualify for funding, and our criteria summary. Those are really kind of our two big guiding documents as to how our funding works, what types of projects are eligible. And then, of course, on the other tabs, there's information about applying, and then the boring policy and forms part of it. And then when we do have an application period, we do a tutorial on how to apply. So anyway, there's also links there on the left-hand side to the projects that we've done as well. So this is a great resource if anybody's interested in learning more. Next slide, please. So I get a lot of calls from folks saying, I have this great idea, would like to see happen, there's a need in this area. What do I do? Where do I start? And so the first thing we talk to folks about is the requirements. So all of our projects are ventures with Fish and Game, and therefore with Fish and Wildlife Service, who administers Pittman-Robertson funds. So we're subject to a bunch of federal regulations associated with that. And so the first thing we ask of potential applicants, partners, do you have the 25% non-federal match? So PR funding is reimbursable, and it's 75% federal funds, and there's a 25% non-federal fund match. We've done a number of creative partnerships with folks that meet those match requirements. Non-federal dollars have been seemingly tight in government agencies, cities, boroughs, state, federal for a while. And so the match component is where we have found some creative ways to make projects happen. The second question we ask folks is your proposal site on public land. So Fish and Wildlife Service regs require, public funds be spent on public lands. We also ask, do you have support of the land manager? So oftentimes folks come to us and they have ideas of things they'd like to see, maybe a state park facility or other governmental facility, borough facility or something they'd like to see improved. And so we ask folks to work with the land manager, get them on board. Maybe there's an organization, a nonprofit group that has match, either cash match they'd like to contribute or some in-kind match, volunteer labor, donated equipment is certainly eligible. But there is a document on our website that describes the different types of match options. If folks are interested in that, it does kind of get complicated, so feel free to reach out and contact me if you have questions. Most of the projects that we have done have involved cash match, but we do have a few that will be coming forward with a volunteer in-kind equipment component. And so the last thing that we ask is that, is a land manager, a government entity, an agency, public agency that's going to be around for 20, 30 years, be able to commit to the long-term maintenance. And this is often the most challenging part. Match can be tricky, but long-term maintenance can be even more tricky because all of the projects that we do are ventures with the federal government, Fish and Wildlife Service. Federal regs require that the federal investment, so the project, the improved trailhead, parking lot, campground, be usable and accessible to the public for a certain amount of time. And that amount of time is the engineered design life, which is typically a long period of time, 10 years for a road, maybe 20 years for a bridge. And so we have agreements that we have to sign with ideally the government agency, land manager to maintain to committing those projects for that period of time. Unfortunately, we don't provide maintenance funds. We just provide funds to, build, improve, and construct. So it is upon the landowner long-term maintenance commitments to fund those. And that, I won't lie, that can often be a struggle, but it is something that is required of us because the whole purpose of these funding and these projects are to be maintainable and usable for the public for the long term. The worst case scenario of that, because people often ask, well, what happens if, for some reason the project is no longer usable by the public? If it's from a lack of maintenance, if it was preventable, the worst outcome is that money could have to be paid back to Fish and Wildlife Service. Nobody wants to do that. To my knowledge, we have not had that situation occur, but it has in other states. So it's definitely something to consider. Next slide. Oh, sorry, back one slide, Caleb. There we go. Oh, I should mention the other thing that we do ask of applicants as well is that they have previous experience with federal funds, either being a federal grant or directly having received federal money. During the pandemic, lots of federal funds were getting distributed to all sorts of communities and organizations. So I think there's a lot more folks that have that experience now, but there is a risk assessment that we're required to do that evaluates the trustworthiness, I guess you could say, capabilities of the organization that's spending the federal funds to be, sorry, yes.
So the experience with federal funding, does that have to be through the organization itself, or can it be through the individual that's managing the grant?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's come up a few times. It has to be through the organization, the organization that's proposed to spend the funds. So, yeah, we do realize that that is it's a barrier, it's a limitation. I hope in the future that we will be able to get away from that, but it's, there's nothing easy about federal money, and we are definitely held accountable for that. And so we are required to document that the folks that we work with also have experience with that. Because all of our projects are collaborations, partners with other entities, they will also be subject to federal audit at some point in the future. It's not really a question of if, it's when, is my understanding. So we want to try and make sure that we do things right so that we avoid audit findings and potential outcomes out of that.
I know this is a really weird question.
Sure.
How is there, how would you know what federal grants are available for this kind, that kind of purpose that aren't Pittman Robertson?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't exactly know the answer to that, but I can, if you like, I can talk to you some more about it. I do know there are some federal grant databases available that folks can log into and list all kinds of opportunities. I haven't really taken a look at those, but I do know that there are different options. And I do know also that, because I assume you're speaking from a shooting range perspective, that for shooting range projects, there are a few different alternate funding sources. I should say too, as part of Match for Our program, grant funds oftentimes from other programs that are non-federal can count towards match. So like the NRA, for example, I believe has a small shooting range grant program in Alaska, and as far as I know, those funds would be eligible as match, as long as there's no federal ties or connection to that funding source. But yeah, I can dig into that a little more and get to you. Yeah, thank you. So folks often ask, I have a project, I have an idea, does this qualify for your funding? I can say yes to all these things. How does this get looked at? How does this get evaluated? How do you pick these projects? So we have 18 criteria that were developed in the beginning of our program. I won't go through all of these in depth, but this is how we evaluate projects. So if somebody has an idea, this is really helpful to look at up front to see and think about the different elements. So you see there's 4 particular criteria up here that have stars next to them: hunter and trapper interest support, operations and maintenance, cooperating federal entity grant management capabilities, and legal access. So these are weighted. So like most programs, we go through a scoring evaluation process. These 4 criteria are weighted, meaning they're of more importance. So just to note that in particular, there is a PDF file of this document on our website with a description of each of these 18 criteria. So helps think about what, how your project might score or relate or be evaluated in these particular criteria. And these are all, I mean, significant, you know, to every project. I don't know about anybody here. I did not come from a construction background, so I have learned a lot the last 4 years about construction, and all of these elements are pretty important from a successful project standpoint. So if you go through our website and look at these criteria and have questions, feel free to call me, reach out. But it's a good place to start to think about kind of the big picture, you know, how does this project, what kind of benefits are, who benefits, what are the, you know, is there any trespass issues? Is there legal access to the site? You know, will this create a trespass issue? So there are lots of good things to think through when you're going through our criteria. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, you know, why do we do this? Why do we spend this money trying to provide public benefit? We have several different types of projects we've done so far. Back in the beginning, we focused mostly on doing projects with Alaska State Parks. At the time, they did have some funding to contribute as match, and of course, a lot of their facilities are starting grounds where folks take off to hunt, recreate, and so we've done both trails, motorized, non-motorized. We've done a number of parking lot and trailhead type projects, either improvements of or expansion. Campgrounds, we've done a couple of campground projects. Most often campgrounds relate to adding additional campsites where folks might be camping as they're taken off on hunting day trips or longer trips, and parking particular, trying to accommodate trucks and trailers. A lot of sites, you know, it gets pretty cramped, and so a lot of it is focused on expanding those. Roads, we've done a number of road improvement projects. You know, if the road's in terrible shape and it's hard to get there, people might not be inclined to use it. Bridges, we've done a few bridge projects as well, mostly for bridges that were old, wood structures, you know, dilapidated, collapsed, essentially cut off access to areas, and so reestablishing that with a new bridge. A boat launch, we've done one boat launch project so far that's been pretty successful. Of course, signs, interpretive panels are also eligible project types. Shooting ranges is a new type of project for us. In 2019, Congress passed the, we call it the TARMARC Act, Target Practice Shooting and Marksmanship Training Support Act, I think. And so that gave all the states, not just Alaska, but all the states, expanded flexibility in how they use Pittman-Robertson funds to do shooting range projects. So we have a couple of range projects that we're working on, and are continuing to learn more about how this project type works. And of course, I'm sure there's other things out there that haven't come to us yet, so more to come. Next slide. I just wanted to give an overview of projects that we've completed, things that we're working on. We are finally to the point where our completed list is longer than our in-progress list, which is kind of nice. It takes a few years to get a project completed, so it's a long-term endeavor. But we have a good spread of things we've done around the state. We did improvements, pretty significant improvements at Chilkoot Lake Road in Haines. Moon Lake Campground is a state parks facility up near Toke that we completed a couple years ago, expanding. Denali Highway Trailhead Kiosks, that was a project we did in partnership with State of Alaska Department of Natural Resources, Division of Mining, Land and Water, who's the landowner up there, putting up some signs at trailheads. Lake Louise boat launch improvements. This was a really neat project that we did in collaboration with the Matsu Borough. It's the borough's site up at Lake Louise. The local community council had approached the borough previously and asked for the parking area to be expanded and the boat launch to be extended to make it more accessible during years of low water. And so the local community contributed some cash funds to the borough towards match, and then the Matsu Trails and Parks Foundation also contributed some money to the borough towards a match on that project. So that was a really great example of a community-inspired project where they were willing to contribute. And so we were able to triple the parking there. I don't know if anybody had been there prior, but trucks and trailers used to line up down the road, put in a vaulted outhouse, kiosk, a deeper boat launch, and a floating dock. So it turned out to be a really nice project. Byers Lake Bridge, that was one of our first projects that we did with Alaska State Parks. The old 40-some, 50-some-year-old bridge, wood bridge, had collapsed. We've done some work with Department of Natural Resources, Division of Forestry. I'm doing some road improvements in the Matsu on DNR forestry roads, popular places for folks to go hunting in the fall season, small game, large game, bear baiting. And so we did some improvements on Willer Cache Road out in Willow, if anybody's familiar with that area, going up towards Hatcher Pass. And then some small improvements within the Moose Range. Mod Road Extension, that was another project we did with DNR, Mining Land and Water, a very large project actually. It was a 6-mile improvement of the road all the way down to Jim Lake, and then we were able to construct the parking area at Jim Lake. That was my first project. That was quite a learning experience. Penguin Creek Bridge, that's here on Turnagain Arm, again, another wood bridge that had failed. The nice thing about that project with state parks was that not only were we able to reestablish access with a new bridge, but Penguin Creek itself is a significant salmon, anadromous salmon stream. And so by keeping ATVs from crossing the stream, you know, the fish really benefited as well. Rex Trail, I don't know if anybody here has gone north to Fairbanks up clear and hunted the Rex Trail. This was another project we did in partnership with DNR, Mining Land and Water, and DOT actually partnered with us on this as well. And we were able to improve the first few miles of the Rex Trail and reroute it off of private land back onto public land. Coincidentally, the worst place at the beginning of the trail was a very large wetlands mud pit. Looked pretty treacherous to travel through. And so with DOT's help, we were able to reroute that mud pit, which unfortunately was on private land, and build a pretty decent road onto public land. Fairbanks North Star Borough shooting range improvements. This was our first shooting range in collaboration with the borough, who provided the match. We were able to do some pretty significant improvements there. The project is actually going to be completed this summer, but we were able to install a vaulted outhouse, divide the 300-yard range into 2 separate firing lines, a new roof structure. This way folks can do education and safety classes concurrent to public use. Before, it was, when the range was closed for a private event, it was the whole range. Now it's only half of it so that public use can take place as well. Another project with state parks, we improved 3 different trailheads out Chena Hot Springs Road, very popular hunting area in the fall. So we were able to greatly expand parking at the Upper Chena Dome, Macedon, and forgetting the third trailhead, but we were able to build ATV ramps, just some gravel berm ramps, so folks don't necessarily have to have a ramp with them to offload and enjoy the trail system. And same thing near Fairbanks, Lower Chattanooga campgrounds was a collaboration with state parks. So, next slide. Sure.
Quick question on the Rex Trail. Has there been any settlement on the weight restrictions on the Rex Trail? I know AOA has been working my second question, has there been any consideration about putting bridges across the Tatnalika and the Totatnalika on the trail? There's been at least half a dozen people die and drown crossing those rivers on four-wheelers or buggies or whatever.
That's a good question, and to be honest, I can't answer that. DNR Mining Land and Water is the land manager up there. I do know they actively manage the trail and they get out on it every year. Those would be good questions to ask them. I'm not sure if they're considering bridges. I would suspect they would probably be talking to us if they had match funds to be able to do that. If you'd like, I can get you contact info for the Fairbanks office there. They'd be able to tell you. But there's no shortage of work to be done on that trail, it seems, considering it's a 40, 50 mile long trail. Yeah, yeah.
It goes all the way past the Judean foothills.
Right,
And I know
right.
the biggest problem with the trail and why they were doing the limitations was, is there's at least 4 big gold mines back there that are running heavy equipment in and out.
Right.
The majority of them tried to run their equipment in and out during the winter as not to tear the trail and be able to get across the rivers, but at the same time, they were still coming in and out in the spring with heavy equipment and absolutely destroyed.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I can get you contact info for the folks in Fairbanks who would be able to answer those questions for you, yeah. So we have a number of things going on this summer, which is kind of exciting. Some of these are projects that got extended for one reason or another, but we've been working with the Forest Service and the Juneau Community Foundation to do improvements on the Treadwell Ditch Trail in Juneau, or on Douglas Island. And so this summer, that project should hopefully be coming to completion. I think we've put in 21 bridges, or when we're done, we will have put in 21 bridges and 10 plus miles of trail tread improvement. Sterigavin Trail Rehabilitation. This is a project that we're doing in collaboration with the Forest Service and Sitka and DOT. This is actually kind of a neat project where DOT is providing the non-federal match funds. The trail system is on Forest Service land, but the trail was destroyed in a landslide in 2014. It's the only land-based hunting trail system that they have in Sitka. And so by reshaping the watershed and rebuilding the trails that were lost, folks there will be able to use that trail system again and get to some of the ridges and some other hunting activities that have been challenging to get to. Saltry Cove Trail in Kodiak. I don't know if anybody here has been to Kodiak. This is another neat project that we're doing in collaboration with the Kodiak Island Borough and the local Island Trails Network, which is the local trail group in Kodiak. The Trails Group is providing some cash match towards the project, but then they're also going to be doing trail rehab work, hopefully this summer, using volunteers and some in-kind equipment donations. So this is a great example of match that's not necessarily cash. And then the borough is taking on the long-term maintenance responsibilities, even though the trail, the portion of trail that we're improving is on state land. Part of this project is also a bit of a paper project in that for some reason, easements were never designated on state land for some portions of this trail. And so through our project, we have been doing that, dedicating easements to these sections of trail to guarantee public access, on the books in perpetuity. We're building a trail with Alaska State Parks and the Matsu Trails and Parks Foundation as our partners on a trail connector in Denali State Park, Curry Ridge to Kasugi Ridge. We're going to be doing a project with state parks this summer out at Eklutna to expand the ATV parking area out there. It's a lot of place where folks go to dial in their equipment and kind of train and get ready for hunts in other places. So we're excited to be able to do that this summer. Anybody in Fairbanks, we've done a really large project with state DNR Forestry to make improvements on Cache Creek Road in Fairbanks, which is a state forest road. very popular place for hunting, firewood gathering, and so we've been able to do 9 miles of road improvement. If anybody's familiar with the ground in Fairbanks, it's erodes very easily, and so this road was really not passable. In addition, the Fortune Creek Bridge, 9 miles in, has been closed, I think, since 2009. A wood bridge, old boxcar bridge that just failed. I mean, literally holes through it. And forestry has had that bridge closed since then, but people were continuing to use it. So we're excited to be able to put a new bridge in for folks to use, reopen that. We do have plans to do a shooting range project with state parks at their only shooting range out mile 36, I believe, of Chena Hot Springs Road at Stiles Creek. It's a very small facility. We're looking at actually being able to expand that a little bit and add some additional shooting lanes. Shooting range projects are complicated, so we're still working through the details and some of that. And we have a couple of new projects that we're trying to get on board right now that were the result of our 22 application process. So making improvements to the Hank Harmon range in Juneau, which is owned by City and Borough of Juneau, and then some improvements at the Wrangell range, the City and Borough of Wrangell. And lastly, we're trying to get off the ground a new project with the Matsu Borough and DNR, Mining Land and Water, to make improvements out in the valley at the Moose Range Went Road trailhead, trying to expand that into an actual parking area rather than just a dirt cul-de-sac as a trailhead. So next slide. So this is just a quick slide of just geographic representation. We really are happy that we've been able to kind of spread our funds around the state. Most of it's been on the road system. There's a few projects that are missing here, but we are hopeful that we're going to be able to continue to do things in more remote communities. The Kenai Peninsula, we haven't had anything that's come together on the Kenai Peninsula yet, so we really strive to be diverse and not only in type of project, but location as well. Next slide. So one other component that I'll go over kind of quickly, which I know has been of interest to this group, my colleague Colton, these were going to be his slides, so I apologize if I end up reading here, but 17B easements. This is something that there's been a lot of interest in. I assume most folks probably know what 17B easements are, but they came from the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, or ANCSA, Section 17B of that act, which reserved public access over lands that were conveyed to Alaska Native Village or regional corporations. And so 17B easements are administered by BLM, and that's for all 17Bs, regardless of what land it goes to, state land, federal land. However, BLM, they have the most interests in the easements that go to BLM land, but if there's an easement that goes to Park Service land, the Park Service may be the entity who administers that easement. So there's a few different types of 17B easements, if folks aren't aware. There's a 25-foot trail easement, which are for foot travel, travel by animal, or ATVs less than 3,000 pounds. There's 50-foot trail easements that allow ATVs larger than 3,000 pounds. And then there's 60-foot road easements for highway vehicles. And there's also a 1-acre site easement, which is more or less a trail, serves as a trailhead for temporary parking, which could be a car, boat, aircraft, camping, or loading and unloading. But because they're temporary, it means use must be of 24 hours or less. So land under the 17B easements are still considered private land owned by villages or corporations, and so Therefore, folks are not allowed to hunt, fish, or otherwise recreate while on these easements. They are simply for travel to and from public lands. Why are people interested in these? So a lot of interest comes from the public and user groups, AOC folks included in the past. And so people know that these trails exist, but maybe their land status map app on their phone, just shows it all is in private ownership. And so as a result, folks don't know if the trail is a legal easement, or if it's private. And so we have done some work trying to work with BLM to make some improvements, or at least mark some of these easements that are more commonly asked about the last few years. And so by doing this, it helps prevent trespass issues, informs users of what they can and can't do on these easements, and then helps prevent with habitat degradation. Next slide. Sure.
Is there a path that is going to show us where these easements start? Where the trail ends?
I'll get to that, yeah. Next slide, please. So this is just to show like the number of trail projects and site investigations that we've done since we started this in 2019. Myself, some other colleagues at Fish and Game, with BLM and with support from AOC, we were able to build some kiosks and get them out to some of these trailheads and install them. BLM was able to put up signs and other information about 17Bs. And the reason that we consider these successful is that they're able to provide education to users about the easements, identify that this is the spot, this is the actual legal access point, and reduce confusion, and then of course help reduce trespass. And so in addition to installing some kiosks and signs and carcinite markers along the trails, we've also done a few brush cutting in a few places to be able to open it up where people can actually get to the other end, to public land. So the reason we really kind of call these trail investigations is because not all of these easements exist on the grounds, which I think is what the questionnaire was getting at. Many of these easements really only exist in the original conveyance documents from the 70s, and which is more or less a squiggly line on a topo map. So the trail investigations were spending time on the ground trying to figure out, does this trail exist? If it does exist, is it in the place where the map indicates? Is it somewhere else? And so it's really kind of a process of trying to get the private landowner, BLM, and an agreement that we can, this is it, this is a spot, this is where we can put a sign or a kiosk. And when we were out doing our investigations, we did run into hunters who did have a lot of questions about this. So we realized that this is a difficult project type. So questions on how to locate them. If you want to go to the next slide. So Colton, who is our GIS map guru extraordinaire, who is going to be here today with his nice poster size copy of the map. We look at all these conveyance documents as well, as the same as the public. There are databases. BLM does maintain a database where anybody can log in and look where these lines are. But again, if you look at the database and you go out on the ground, you might find conflicting answers. And so Colton has built this really great map for the Glen Allen office, basically that highlights all the 13B easements that are on conveyance documents for Unit 13. And the purpose of this is to be able to have this in our office so that folks can look at it. They can write down a conveyance document number and then contact BLM and say, I am interested specifically in this 17B easement. Tell me more about it. Or they can go into the BLM's 17B easement database. They actually have a very nice web page with brochures and information about 17Bs, and then a link to their database, and so you can type in a location and look. Yes?
That's my problem, is that you have to know where you're gonna go before to find out about where you wanna go. There's this central place that I can say, okay, what are the locations of all the 17Ds on Unit 13? Where are they at? And then I can say, okay, now I wanna find out about that particular trail. There's not something.
Yeah, you are correct. And, because they are administered by BLM, we can't really give a whole lot of information. But, we put this together as a resource for ourselves, a resource for the public. I'll have Colton's contact information here at the end. He can send you a copy of this map if you want to print it. But it's a good place to start the conversation, figure out this is where the road system is, this is closest to where I camp, this is the EIN number, and then be able to go to BLM and say, tell me more about this.
I've tried going on that BLM side, and it is.
It's not the most user-friendly, yes. I would totally agree with you on that. And we have our GIS folks occasionally go out to their database and grab their layer and import it into our GIS layers that we use, which was used to build this. And yeah, it's not the most user-friendly, that's for sure. And again, that's part of the reason why Colton built this map for us, is so that at least our staff and the public members that come in can look at it. We can't tell you a whole lot about each individual trail, but it's a good place to start to be able to contact BLM. And really our hope is that if people are asking, if the BLM rec planner, in Glen Allen is getting lots of questions about these 3 easements, maybe they don't exist, then hopefully we'd be able to do something with them to actually construct that, of course, in consultation with the private landowner. But yes.
Is this map online?
It is not as of yet, and that kind of has to do with some legal things, but as I mentioned, Colton's contact info will be here at the end, and he can email folks copies of it. Yeah.
What would be the legal thing?
Well, the legal thing being that these are administered by BLM, and so we don't typically post, federal rules and regs on our site. We would like to get these up on our website, and so that is the intent at some point. We're just not there yet.
This is the access for the people of Alaska, correct? So when we go through an Alaska organization to identify them, to show us as an Alaskan, I don't care about BLM per se.
Sure, and that's why we have these files, and we're available to share them with folks that are interested. Yes.
So a lot of these 17 easement trails are just, BLM just draws it on their land. But there's trails going to them and trails beyond them, and nobody's ever drawn the trails in on both sides. So really nobody knows where they're at without some kind of direction from the state saying this is where the trail is to even get to the 17 easement trail.
Right, and actually that's a good point. Heidi Hatcher in the Glen Allen office, I think for the last couple of years, they've been, every time they fly surveys, they've been collecting tracks on trails that they see, because there are many trails and there's new trails, social trails being created all the time. And so there is an effort in the Glen Allen office. I don't know all the details about it. I think it was initiated by a graduate student to start making tracks to be able to do maps or a GIS layer that encompasses not only these, but all the other trails that get you there as well. So
Somebody has a map of that then?
I don't know if it's completed, but it's a project that they've been working on. I could get you contact info for Heidi in the Glen Allen office. She could tell you the most about it, but I know they've been working on it for at least 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure how far they are, but they're trying to collect new data and new GPS tracks all the time when they're out flying and doing their work.
Yeah, a lot of that you can just get off of Google Maps. I mean, looking down at it, you can see the trail, but nobody ever drew the thing in.
Right.
They're only doing it for 13, they're not doing it for anywhere else.
Well, Heidi's just doing it for her management area. I mean, the other local fish and game offices, wildlife staff, they may be also doing something similar. I'm not aware of that, but there certainly could be. The TOC office has had interest in 17B easements and trails, so they may have something similar that they're working on. Can we go to the next slide, Caleb?
Heidi is a great resource. When I used to work for Pogo
Yes.
Mine, of course, the road is closed going into Pogo Mine, but the Good Pasture River was open. But there was a trailhead there marked Quartz Creek. Of course, every 10 miles on any road in Alaska, there's a Quartz Creek trail. So I called the Glen Allen office and asked what the access was to that area. And her first question was, what is the GPS mark on the trailhead? And where are you going? So I gave her the GPS mark of the trailhead, roughly the trail where I wanted to go park and camp, and she said yes. But the very first question she asked me, Robert, was what is the GPS mark on the entrance to said trail?
So you were sitting there, gave it to her, and she could tell you that's where you're
I
at?
called her from my house and said, here's the GPS trail of this Quartz Creek trail that follows the Good Pasture River. I would like to go ride this trail and hunt. Do I have the 17B easement on that? And within an hour, she called me back and said, yes, that is a 17B trail.
Yeah, I imagine she probably had to go through the database, the GIS layer, and probably why she asked for that.
She asked me,
Yeah.
what is the GPS coordinate
Yeah.
of the trailhead?
Yeah. And I should say, and I'm sure folks here are aware, but our area wildlife staff are amazing resources. I mean, if you have interest in a hunter access project, they're the first person I would recommend you talk to. They know the access needs of the area, they know the user groups of the area, they know the issues, and so they are a tremendous resource. And as we go through and evaluate projects, they are absolutely involved in that process. So I always encourage folks to reach out to them to talk about ideas, because they can often recommend something that can only make a project better. If you've got a bad idea, in their mind, they're going to tell you, but I'm sure they will also have suggestions of what could be done to make that a better project, which, is what we all want. So. This is another slide that poster that Colton has made. The TOC office has had a number of public inquiries regarding 17B easements. So this is available in their office as well. Colton's contact info there if you would like copies of these posters emailed to you. It's in the handout on the tables. Feel free to contact me, Google us. I mean, we're happy to get you in contact and get copies of these. Last slide. Again, contact info here, so we're happy to talk to folks. And so we're hoping to do more work with BLM in the future on 17B easements. We've kind of hit the low-hanging fruit, at least around Unit 13, with signs and kiosks, trails that are there that people just didn't know if it was the right one, if they were in the right place. And so we're hoping to be able to do more work with them. BLM really prioritizes easements that go to BLM land, but, priority can also come from public interest too. So BLM is the administrator of easements leading to state land, and so they have investigated those trails due to public interest. And so hopefully in the future, we'll continue to work with them, and it'll be based on need, so the more folks reach out to them, ask questions to them, about particular locations, we're hopeful that we'll be able to continue to work with them in the future on making improvements to those. Yeah.
So something that we suggested year after year, offer members like us that would be more than happy to go to a trailhead and help blaze it in and signify it, help put up signs and whatever. With tons of volunteers, AOAA, they have people that volunteer, but nobody ever approaches us. We never hear from them.
Yeah, well, I mean, the folks in Glen Allen are aware. We've brought that up a number of times to them that, hey, if there's interest on their behalf, if they have time to be able to, get a project going with us, I mean, we're happy to do that. We realize user groups are totally happy. We've offered it to them a number of times. They are aware. And so,
Control of the hours that we put in and actually get the Robert's money dedicated to match those hours that we put in as well.
You know, I don't know if PR funding would work, just because with our funding, there's a long-term maintenance commitment, and my impression has been that BLM is hesitant to commit to long-term maintaining 17B easements because they are the last priority for them. I don't know how to change that or how to make that different. I guess I would just encourage folks to contact the BLM rec planner, if it's regarding Unit 13, they're in Glen Allen, or if it's up in Interior, the BLM folks in the Fairbanks office. But if we can get them on board, I think if enough people contact them, ask, say this is a need, this is a priority, we want this, I would hope that they would be willing to work with us to do that. So we would certainly love to do that, but I don't know how it would work out with PR. I think we'd probably have to talk to our folks some more about that, just because of that maintenance commitment. And also technically the land is private land, but if BLM could commit to, a 10-year commitment on maintaining it, then I would think we could probably work it out. So anyway, I guess the summary is, if you've got questions, reach out to the BLM folks. We're happy to get you contact info for the right person, for the right area. But the more they hear from the public, the better. We can talk to them all the time, and we do, but I don't know that they always are interested in listening to us. Yeah.
So I got a guy that says he could give us a GPS coordinates for every stream crossing for a Geronimo stream, so there'd be a blanket easement. Would this be something we'd have to go through? Could we use this to fund that, or what?
You mean as far as a 17B easement?
As far as an easement from the state to cross Andronymous streams on a wherever that trail hits an Andronymous stream, to go across it and not get a ticket.
Well, so it depends on what land the trail's on. So if it's on, state land.
Not the stream that the state owns, an Andronymous stream.
Right, and so our habitat section does the permitting, and to be honest, I don't know what all the process that they use to determine which stream crossings permits are needed and not needed. I could certainly get you in touch with the folks here in our Anchorage office that could talk to you about that.
That's a waste of time. Could he get funding through this for the guy to put that on every trail? He said he can do it off of a map.
There's a match requirement, there's a public land requirement, and then there's the maintenance requirement. So, if the public land manager was,
Wouldn't be any maintenance or anything, it's just an easement to drive across that stream.
well, if it's on state land and there's not currently an easement, then DNR Mining Land and Water is the place to talk to get a dedicated public easement. And it's a long process to do that. They have many layers of review, and of course, part of that review would include Fish and Game Habitat folks who do the stream crossing permittings, but it'd be a place to talk to them. It would be, if it was on state land, it would be with DNR. Is what you're talking about on state land, you think?
I'm talking about a Geronimo stream, so it'd be Fish and Game.
Right, but the land getting you to that stream, the trail getting you to that stream.
Yeah, whether it's a 17B trail or a state trail, whatever. Any trail that thousands of people are using, and they go across the thing, they get a ticket for driving across a salmon stream.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
areas that they have blanket easements, like the Connect River is pretty much the whole thing, the blanket easement to drive across the Geronimo stream. The Slant River, those were put in by, basically, troopers got tired of writing tickets, so they got Fish and Game to give them an easement so that people could actually cross.
Yeah, yes, our habitat section, and I can connect you with our folks to talk to. Megan Marie in our office is a really good resource, but we have different habitat folks, Fairbanks, Juneau, depending on where the area is that you're talking about. But if you.
I'm talking about the whole state, every trail in the state should have an easement across an Geronimo stream. Have hunter access, you can't go up, you can only stop here, you can't go across that stream.
Sure. If you like, send me an email, I can connect you with the folks to talk to you about that for sure. Or give me a call, yeah. Any other questions, or?
You referred to
corporation or?
Yeah, I mean, private land being, anything other than public land. So, corporation lands, private land, individual private land, all the projects that we have done have been on public land, either owned by, state, federal, boroughs, cities, municipalities. So, and part of that is, public entities have to maintain public access. So it's an easy fit as far as guaranteeing, the purpose and the long-term intention of the project to be for public access. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
Since the hunter access program has started, what's your average annual allowance per budget? What's your total?
That's a good question. There isn't. It's been dependent on gun and ammo sales. I mean, the formula for allocating PR funds nationally has to do with the number of paid license holders and land mass. And since, Alaska by default, we have the largest land mass, we get the largest amount of funds. Texas is next. And so the amount of funding available to us changes every year. It's different. And so the reason this program came to be was in 2016 during the Obama administration, gun and ammo sales, that was the first real big boost. And so the division had funds available above and beyond what we needed for operating. So all of our biologists, all of our management projects, research projects, 90-some percent, most of our programs are dependent on PR funding, and then of course license sales make up the match for that. And so back in, I believe it was 16 was the first time that there was PR funding available in a large quantity above and beyond what the division needed to operate. And my understanding is at that time the legislature actually gave us the authority to access that money. So there's the federal pot of funds, but we can't dip into it. We can only dip into what the legislature gives the division the authority for. And so my understanding is in 2016, the legislature gave the division authority to more of the federal funds, because if we don't spend it, it gets reverted and goes to federal migratory bird programs, and legislators didn't want it to be reverted. Yeah, and so so that was where this program first got up off the ground, reaching out to partners. Initially, we worked a lot with state parks and mining land and moderate DNR because it's very easy to move funds between state agencies. And at that time, they had some match money. Budget cuts have really impacted the last, I guess, probably 10 years now. But so that's where it came to be. So the amount of funding available to us every year depends on the big pot of federal funds, and then it's also dependent on how much the legislature gives us authority to. I think it was the FY21 supplemental CIP budget. There was $7.5 million designated for hunter access. So the money that these last 2 years that we've been spending has been out of that pot of funding. Does that answer your question?
Not really. So since 2016, which was the first year, what's been the average that you guys have allocated? I know we can't forecast what 2023 or 2024 is going to be, but like after the last 8 years of doing it, is it approximately $750,000, approximately $3.5 million?
Well,
Sounds like it's in that neighborhood somewhere.
So projects to date so far, we have $17 million worth of projects to date, everything all together. This year we were looking to spend about $2 million. Last year we allocated a little over $1.5 million. The first year I think it was $1.5 million. So since we've done this application process, we've had a little, between $1 and $2 million to spend, but then collectively total since the beginning has been about $17 million.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Follow-up question, are there years where you get less requests for funding than you have in funding?
Yeah, I mean, as far as, as far as the hunter access program, since I've been involved, non-federal funds are still tight, they're, and not only are non-federal funds tight, but there's also a large surplus of federal funds available through, infrastructure bill, Great American Outdoor Act. I mean, there's all these other federal programs that have come to be since COVID. And so there's a lot of, some of those programs require match funds. I think maybe some of them don't, but there's a lot more federal money available. And my general understanding is that match is still limited. So that's where, partnerships come in. And so working with user groups or other interested entities to come up with match funds. In-kind match works great, but it more often than not, a project can't solely be completed with just in-kind match. It does usually take some cash to get to the point where the in-kind kicks in. So you got to design a project and get to the point where the volunteer labor can take place. So some level, depending on the project, some level of cash is generally required. But so far we've been able to spend what we've hoped, expected to spend, but I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes more challenging in the future. I've talked to some folks from other grant programs that haven't been able to spend all their money just because there weren't enough projects and people with match to do them. So, yeah.
Isn't there a percentage of the Pittman Robinson that's supposed to go to access?
Not for wildlife restoration. That is true for Dingle Johnson. So for our Sportfish sister program, I do believe it's, I want to say 15%. And so our Sportfish division, they have a very predictable amount of funding every year. And so I believe typically that's averaged around $3 million or something to that extent, based on the federal regulation that requires the percentage, which again, I believe is about 15%, goes towards access projects, but that regulation does not exist in PR regs, which is interesting. So, anybody, other questions?
I want to compliment you and the department for what they've done on the hunter education program. That it was the Outdoor Council that spent 20 years getting the department to recognize that 10% of the Pittman Robertson money could go to hunter access. That money was available, for decades and never used. And the reason the department never used it is because they always said, again, we didn't have enough money and saving the Pittman Robertson to do the survey and inventories that were more important to the department to determine what the harvestable surplus of game was. But because of the Outdoor Council, keep pounding the department, pounding the administration, is the reason that this program got put together in the first place. And in a short time, you guys have done an excellent job getting it implemented.
It's been a process.
And so your partners in the BLM, they're not partners at all. I'm on the BLM's Resource Advisory Committee for the state. They haven't met since last May, and they have no meeting planned, so we'll take them to court pretty soon because that's a federal law that they have to meet. But I talked with Brent Goodrum and Juno here yesterday, and there's just absolutely no support from BLM to be working on any of these 17B easement issues. That everything that we're going to be able to do will, these 17 Bs, if they're not used, they can be vacated. And the native corporations and the villages understand that, and they've been programmed to stop, any access that they can get. So with the reluctance on BLM's part to do anything, that's left what we tried to do with the hunter access program. Always bad when it gets that piece. And so I think, the part that you brought up about the public pushing, the public needs the Department of Interior folks over and over on many things and getting little results. But we at least pounded on ADF&G to use this money for hunter access, got this program going, so we're, moving ahead. You guys are doing a great job. And all we need is a new president and the U.S. and the new secretary of the Department of Interior, and we'll get these 17 Ds all lined up and be able to access.
It'd be great if they could all be surveyed and,
How many years do we have, Rob? Before they're vacated?
Well, how many years do you and I have?
No, we don't have enough, I know that.
15.
Yeah. Before they vacated the 17 Bs, what was there a timeline?
Oh, absolutely.
What is
not.
it?
Yeah, I mean, it was so, nebulous, that's what they put on there. And there is a lot, when they transferred the title ownership to these 44 million acres of land that were chosen to block access to public land. When that first started out, there was over 600 17B easements that were written down. And the last that I got any kind of an estimate out of BLM is there's about 250 yet that are left out of that 600, and that 250 is not surveyed. So, absolutely no cooperation out of BLM. So, yeah, but the state's doing good. I mean, you guys, hats off. I mean, in a short time.
there is the BLM office here in Anchorage. They do have a person, I don't know what her official title is, but I know she's the 17B person. We've typically worked with the area field office staff, but there is somebody here in town. I can find her contact info if anybody wants to talk to her as a local person.
Yeah, get that information to us.
There's someone local here, is there out of the Fairbanks office, do you know? Is there someone doing the same?
For BLM? Yeah, so my understanding is that the outdoor rec planners are like BLM's version of our area, management biologists. And Glenn Allen, who we've been working with there, has been Corey Larson, and I think he's been there a very long time. We had done some work year before last with Colin Cogley, who is the Eastern and Interior BLM outdoor rec planner in Fairbanks. I think he may have since retired. But if folks have interest in who to contact, let us know and we can find info for you. Yeah.
Could you get those contact information to Caleb and to Rod?
Yes. Yeah. Next. Remind me. I'll follow up next week and get that to you for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Katie, for joining us today. Can we get a round of applause, Katie?
Yeah, no problem. Again, if anybody has questions about projects or ideas, likewise, if you have ideas of types of projects you'd like to see us do or locations, we can't promise anything, but we'll certainly try and we can help point folks into who to talk to if you're interested in a project in a particular area. Colton's excellent land status researcher. We can see who the landowner is for that particular area and get you in contact with them to demonstrate the need and try and get partnerships together. These projects are often like puzzle pieces, and every single project is a different puzzle. And so what worked for one totally might not work for another. And so I try hard to help folks figure out the puzzle pieces and how to put things together in the way that makes the most sense. So, thank you.